second meeting of the Charter Review Committee, and I wanted to ask us all to go ahead and observe a couple things. Our wonderful clerk has informed us that the last several meetings have been difficult to transcribe because we're either not speaking into the speaker or we're all jumping in. So we're going to make every effort to acknowledge. If you'll run through the roster like we sent out last night of how to, Lena's going to go ahead and supply you with that. We need to study that, Ms. Bonner. And then all of you keep me in line so that I repeat for her benefit the names and who seconded things for her benefit. All right, very good. We're going to go just a slight bit out of order this morning to accommodate our guest speaker. It is my delight, pleasure, and honor to introduce Mr. Mika Allen, our administrator, who I have known for over 25 years, has, like Ms. Bonner, has been pulling miracles out of thin air for a while. And so she has been asked to cover the structure of Augusta government as it currently exists in broad brush form, and several of you had submitted questions for her to consider and try to enlighten us on. And so with no further ado, Ms. Allen, thank you for joining us and making so many changes to do so.
Thank you for having me, and good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I am not going to spend a lot of time going over a number of things because I am going to try to make sure that we touch base on the actual role of the administrator. Each of you should have received a copy of the actual job description for the administrator position. That is basically what I will be speaking from. So, of course, the role of the administrator is to make sure that they are actually abiding and moving forward with Augusta's mission. And you can see the actual mission stated on your screen. I won't read every word of it for you, but I will go now to the overview of the administrator's responsibilities. So the administrator presides over the daily operation and administration of our local government within the guidelines of Augusta-Richmond County ordinances, our policies, and the procedures, state and federal laws, and implements directives from the mayor and Augusta-Richmond County Commission, better known as our governing body. I actually report to the mayor and the Augusta-Richmond County Commission. These are just some of the actual items or tasks that are taken directly from the job description as to what the administrator is responsible for, executes all the lawful orders, manages and directs the activities of all departments by planning, organizing, and staffing, advises the mayor and Augusta-Richmond County Commission on financial conditions and future needs of our local government. I actually make recommendations on county affairs, informs the mayor of significant controversial issues, prepares, submits, and executes a proposed annual budget each year, and provides necessary documentation for the mayor and clerk of commission to prepare the agenda for all commission meetings and attends all commission meetings. This is actually the structure of the administrator's office at this time. You have, of course, our executive team, which consists of our deputy administrator of operational and community services, our deputy administrator of general and administrative services, and then we have our assistant administrator, who works on various special projects and analysis. We also have a communications manager position, as well as 2 executive assistant positions, an open records officer, 311, and a grants writer position. So this is pretty much our organizational chart for the administrator's office. That's basically it in a nutshell. It's basically to oversee the day-to-day operations of the City of Augusta government. And with that, I'll ask if anybody has any questions or anything that I can answer.
Okay, Madam Chair.
Chair acknowledges Mr. Pearson.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Allen, when you say you report to the mayor and the Augusta Commission, uh, what exactly does that mean? Are they your bosses?
Yes, sir. I keep all of them updated on anything that I'm made aware of. So I do my best to make sure that I inform all of them.
So you have 11 bosses?
Yes, sir.
That's it. That's interesting.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson.
Thank you.
Next question, I think, looks to be Mr. Coleman.
Good morning, Madam Administrator. My question is, what kind of oversight do you have over department heads that are elected and non-elected? Do you have control and oversight of their budgets? Do you know when they're spending money? Do they have to go through you to get okay through you and the mayor before they spend any money? And what is the limit that they can spend without going through your office or the mayor's office?
So I would say that position has oversight of all of the respective activities that go on throughout the budget. The elected officials are a little different as it relates to the control mechanism. When it comes to the departments, the departments work very well with the administrator's office in their respective requests as we are preparing for the budget and any respective expenditures that they may have. So does that position control what they spend? I would say yes when it comes to those department heads, because, those are the ones that report directly to the actual administrator.
Do you also have the authority to do like reviews with department heads? Are they doing a job? Do you have oversight on, are they accomplishing their goals, that who sets forth for them? Because I honestly believe that you need to have more control over individual department heads.
So with performance evaluations, I think that's what you're getting to, Mr. Coleman. I am working now to develop the respective performance evaluations for each of the respective department heads.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Backos?
Good morning, Ms. Allen. I just wanted to clarify, when you say that you have 11 bosses, does that mean a specific commissioner can come to you and direct you on what to do, or what is the limitations as far as them being your bosses?
As I understand it, as it's documented, I answer to each of them. If there is a decision to do anything differently, of course, I think it takes the majority of them to make a decision, to render a decision. I will not say that any individual one could not come to me and ask me about, doing something, because again, I do report to each and every one of them. And my goal is to make sure that I'm being very responsive to all of them.
And can I just follow up with another question? What do you think would make your job more effective?
That's a good question, Ms. Pagos. I am trying to stay really neutral in this process, and I'm leaving it up to this great committee to determine, based on what you have seen in the job description and what you see as the responsibilities of the administrator, to determine what you think would assist the administrator in being more effective. I just, want to stay a little neutral as it relates to that.
Mr. Pearson?
Madam Chair, let me ask you, or make a comment. Personally, as a member of the committee, I really don't need for you to be neutral or political. I need for you to tell us what we need to be looking at, what we need to be thinking, because we don't know everything that you do. And in the best interest of the city of Augusta, we need for you not to be neutral, okay? Be comfortable.
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Ms. Pecos?
So I was going to ask you what your challenges are, but I'm guessing that may not be a super comfortable question either. As opposed to an administrator and a city manager, what is the difference in your view? And would we benefit from potentially having a city manager rather than it? To me, they sound the same, and I'm not really sure what the differences are. But in your experience, do you have any input as far as that goes? Because you're the one doing the job.
So, I will say this because, I've spoken to various other agencies, and it depends on what agency you're at that reflects whether or not it's a city administrator or a city manager. Some areas, the city administrator has duties, additional duties, more so than some of the city manager positions. So I think it's really going to be dependent upon what each governing body is looking for in the person that is sitting in that role. I hope that answers it, Ms. Baker. Okay.
Mr. Powell?
Madam Administrator, for the record, I'd like to state that I think that you did a absolutely tremendous job for this county when Hurricane Helene hit. You created a group and put them together very quickly and allowed the cleanup to begin within about 5 or 6 days. And some of the other surrounding counties are just now getting to the point where you can see debris is actually being removed. A wonderful job. I don't know, a lot of people in this county may not appreciate what you did in that position, but I can guarantee you that anybody who followed the hurricane removal of debris can attest to a wonderful job that you did.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I have a good team. I'm surrounded by great people.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry, Martin. This is Mr. Cole.
One question. As we move forward in modernizing this charter, how can we assist the administrator's office, in making you all more effective in assisting the community?
That's a good question, Mr. Cole. That is one of the things, that keeps me up. I'll be honest with you. As you all know, my background is technology, and I've been in technology for over 20-something years. So, we're always looking at ways we could do better, and what can we modernize to make it better? What tools can we utilize? I think the biggest support is that we will need is to support us as we move in that direction. Change is very, very hard for some people to accept. And I guess being known as change agents, I'm always looking to change to see what we can do better. So the things that keep me up is how can we do better? How can we be more responsive to our citizens? How can we improve the transparency? How can we put performance metrics in place? How can we actually make decisions that's based on data and not just making decisions without having data-driven decisions? So those are the things that our team is actually working on currently right now.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think this whole committee would share Lee's comments about how well Augusta Richmond County responded to that disaster, and we're very grateful for you and your team. Are there any other questions for Ms. Allen at this point? Mr. Coleman?
Yes, ma'am. I'd like to have one more question dealing with non-elected department heads. When they're operating within their budget, when it comes to personnel, do they have the authority, or do they have to come through your office before they change the job description or create new positions in their departments?
The elected officials do not, but I will say that most of the elected officials do work with the administrator's office to get that done.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Powell?
A question. In most large organizations, you have checks and balances to make sure that a department is doing what they are directed to do, and the department heads are running the departments as they're supposed to. In other words, if I'm running the cloud coverage department and my department fails, who is actually the checks and balances? Who would go to that department head and say, things are not working out, you need to do this or this and straighten things out. And second part of that question is you mentioned metrics for each department head. I would imagine those would have to go before the commission and be approved for each department to justify what the departments are doing. And could you elaborate on that just a little bit?
Yes, sir. So what we'll do is actually start working to develop, and we have already started having meetings with the department heads to develop those performance metrics. Industry standard performance metrics are already outlined for us to start as a base. So we will be working with the departments to establish that, and then we'll be bringing back that report to the governing body to let them know these are the performance metrics that we're putting in place. Also, those performance metrics will be utilized as part of the evaluation for those department heads as well. Our goal is ultimately to be more accountable to our citizens, and I think we're moving in the right direction in getting that done.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. Ms. Pulliam?
Backus.
Excuse me, Bacos, yes, Bacos.
So as far as the performance reviews, I know you, in order to take action, like hiring and firing, you have to go before the commission and they have to agree. Can you write up department heads? Because are you kind of their boss in that structure? Can you write them up based upon their performance reviews?
That's, the administrator currently does not have hire and fire. They can always recommend things to the governing body, and then the governing body can actually take action. The administrator can, document certain things that a department is not doing, but when it comes to the respective disciplinary action, that action has to be done by the body.
Okay. And just a follow-up question too, as far as finances. I know you're over the budget and all of that, but what about grant funds? So when a department receives grant funds, I believe it comes to the city and then the commission releases it to them. Do you have any oversight over grant funds as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Wimberly? Okay. Ms. Barnhill Turley?
Just want to follow up. Good morning. Just want to follow up on something Ms. Backo said. If you don't have hiring and firing power, how do you evaluate the department heads? Who puts in place a PIP? I mean, it's always a process to either hire someone or fire someone. So who originates that PIP? And how is that evaluated? Because, of course, firing someone is, of course, the last resort. So how is that process? Or is there a process?
So if we have to do a performance improvement plan, that would be documented with the actual administrator would document that with that individual, but it would also have to be reviewed and looked at and discussed with the actual governing body.
May I follow up? So does that mean that the governing body also has input into the requirements of the PIP, or is that solely your discretion with maybe that person's supervisor? What's that process look like?
That process would be with the administrator as well in that department head. You're welcome.
Ms. Cody? I'm sorry, Mr. Wimberly. All right, thank you.
Everybody's asking some great questions up here. But as I understand, the administrator does not have hiring and firing power over any of the department heads. She has total recommendations. And having that power, all she could do is recommend it to the commission. With the performance statement, she could help develop the performance statement, but it's up to the commissioner to approve that performance statement and hold those heads to that performance. Am I correct?
Not necessarily. You're right as far as the hiring fire, but the actual performance evaluation has been conducted by the administrator's office. So they would actually develop
as a review.
Yes, but it doesn't get approved by the governing body as it relates to what that performance evaluation is.
Oh, okay.
The results of the evaluation is not pending the governing body's approval.
So then that's something I misunderstood. I thought the governing body is the one that approves what the performance statement should read. Am I correct?
The actual, in the past, because, you know, of course, you guys know, I've been here 7 months. In the past, when the evaluations were performed, the administrator met with the respective department heads and identified what their expectations were, and then they evaluated them on those expectations. It did not go before the governing body for the approval of those expectations.
Then I just got educated. But anyway, my understanding is that the governing body, especially when it comes to hiring and firing power, is the one that makes that decision. So that leaves you out as in who should be fired or who should be hired? Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Wimberly, do you regard that as a strength or a weakness?
Well, it's a weakness in that the administrator hands are tied as into quick action, in that a decision could be dragged on, and if you can't get those 6, then you still have that dead weight with you that she's identified, or whoever's the administrator identified. So it can be a weakness.
Thank you for that. Chair acknowledges Mr. Coleman.
Thank you. I'd like to also add something to that. As one of your committee members, I honestly believe that you need to have more power dealing with department heads, because our commissioners, we have 10, and they're up for re-election every 2 years. You're liable to have 5 different ones. And to me, to have a strong foundation and a strong leader, you need to have more input. That's what I wanted to add to that.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman. Mr. Pearson?
Well, I'm not in, but I can
No,
come in.
It was me. So,
Pardon me, it's Mr. Excuse me, Mr.
military. I'm a total military guy, and I love structure. And when I look at this document, I see the administrator, that's you, right?
Yes, sir.
And these people under here answer to you.
Yes, sir.
Right? Performance evaluations is key, whether it's monthly, quarterly, or however you plan to do it. I think that's a great implementation that you're going forward with. And you track what they do, whether good or bad. Well, what we say, recommend both rewards and punishment. And I think you should have that power to be able to do that, to manage the personnel underneath you. And it should trickle down. They should be doing, the department heads should be doing performance evaluations on the people below them. The supervisors should be doing performance evaluation on the people below them. Because if it ain't in black and white, it ain't right. And if you don't implement, if you don't have that written down, how can you really say this person's not doing their job? If you're not giving them that performance evaluation, letting them know how they're doing, whether good or bad. So I commend you on implementing that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. Mr. Powell?
I've heard a lot of people in the community discussing quite a few things about this committee and what they could possibly do and what they would love to see us do. Naming a king and queen is one of them, but that probably is not going to happen. So is there, as of May 1st, 2025, any policy that you know of within this government about commission attendance?
Not that I'm aware of, Mr. Powell.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Allen? Ms. Allen, we would like to reserve the right to call you back with future questions, and very much appreciate you moving so many meetings around to be with us this morning. It's been very helpful.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. Appreciate it very much. All right, Ms. Bonner, do we need to do a roll call for the official roster, or can we?
We can.
Thank you, Ms. Allen.
Thank you.
Mr. Pearson. Just speaking to your mic, just.
Present.
Okay. Miss Dr. McCorn.
Present.
Ms. Bakers.
Present.
Ms. Wilhelmy.
Present?
Ms. Turnley.
Present.
Mr. Cole.
Present.
Ms. Cody. Present. Mr. Powell.
Present.
Mr. Coleman.
Present.
Mr. Wembley.
Present.
And Mr. Fouché. Madam Chair, it appears that we have all members of the CRC present.
Thank you, Ms. Bonner. The next item would be to approval of the minutes, but,
Well, I have some drafts here.
all right, very good.
You can-
Ms. Bonner has been given the impossible task of trying to keep up with three separate bodies, the actual commission, the commission subcommittees, and now ours. So we will be grateful for whatever she is able to come up with and her team. It's a pretty impossible ask. If you just take a moment to review these. You can imagine how impossible this is when we don't have accurate recordings of who did what, and that is unfortunate, but we'll get better as time goes on. Mr. Cole?
Well, I move that we accept the minutes from the last meeting, pending any necessary correction, and placed in the archive for safekeeping.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Cole, second by Ms. Barnhill Turley. All in favor?
One correction.
Yes, sir.
And I know this happens often because my name is not a very common name, but the spelling is McCorn, M-C-C-O-R-N.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Thank you for that, Dr. McCorn. Yes, sir. This is for Mr. Fouché.
Thank you. Should we have discussion on the first and third? There are 4 months that have 5 Thursdays, those being May, July, October, and January. There's an opportunity to have an extra meeting on those particular months if we go every other Thursday instead of the first and third.
That will be brought up later in the meeting because we do need to have an active discussion on that, and that will follow in the minutes of this meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. If there are no other comments, all in favor? You have to use your voting thing. Clicker. Also, if you guys can turn your microphones off, again, this is a training thing that I'm as guilty as anyone is of. Thank you, Ms. Bonner.
Let me announce, that motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. All right, with that, let us move on to the Carl Vincent Institute of Government crew. Dr. Rex Facer, thank you all for making the trek this morning to be with us.
Well, again, it is our pleasure to be with you and to have the opportunity to talk a little bit about the budget of Augusta, Richmond County. And again, I'm going to give you a fairly high kind of overview of municipal budget. And as I do that, I want to highlight a couple of kind of best practice issues for you to keep in mind as you think about budget processes and whatnot as they go into the charter, for example. These recommendations come out of a group called the National Advisory Council of State and Local Government Budgeting. It was a group put together by the National League of Cities, the National Association of State Budget Officers, as well as the Government Finance Officers Association. And they suggest that there really ought to be at least 5 kind of key issues that drive budgeting, especially at the local level. One is that there should be a long-term perspective. That one of the challenges, and it's one that we'll see, is that there becomes a fixation on the short term, especially when there are budget shortfalls. And you want to make sure that we have that long-term perspective so that we don't lose sight of the capacities and the need for extended services. There should also be linkages to the organization's goals, and that's one of the things you heard the administrator talk about is trying to bring some of those things into that process as they're looking at performance measures and objectives and trying to bring that to bear on the budget process. The third is that budget decisions ought to focus on results and outcomes, not just inputs and processes. And again, that can be challenging because it's a lot easier to measure how many cases we process than it is to necessarily think about the number of cases solved if you're looking at detective work, for example. It also needs to involve and promote effective communication with stakeholders, and that's one of the things that you want to make sure that that budget process is engaging not just the stakeholders within the government, but also the citizens and the others outside. And lastly, that it provides incentives to government management and employees to make best use of budgetary funds. One of the complaints that we sometimes hear is that there are incentives for people, especially near the end of fiscal years, to start spending money because they're afraid that if they don't spend it this year, they're not going to have it next year. And so we want to be careful about those incentives. And so there are strategies about being able to roll monies over and other things that can help mitigate some of that. But want to keep that kind of in your radar on budget practices. Now, a couple of things about, we often hear statements like, well, if I have to balance my budget in my household, then the government should have to as well. And there are some things that make government budgeting a little bit different. One of them is that we use fund accounting. My students always used to get confused that I was saying fun accounting. And so while some of us may think accounting is fun, this is really about having segregated your monies into different categories, essentially. And you have a broad category known as the general fund, and that's for general government operations and revenues. And you'll see in a moment that Augusta Richmond is actually somewhat unique in that they have a couple of different general funds. Most local governments have a single general fund where law enforcement, for example, is broken out into its own general fund operation here in Augusta Richmond. Then there are enterprise funds. Enterprise funds are those that are designed to operate more business-like. Think about this as your water and sewerage fund, for example, where you're charging a fee, and that fee is designed to cover not only the operations, but the maintenance and long-term development of that service as well. And it's not necessarily designed to be subsidized by general tax dollars. Then you have special revenue funds. These are where the revenue has a specific purpose. Now, some of those may be, for example, the ARPA funds, the American Rescue Plan Act monies that came in. Those had to be kept segregated so that they could keep track of that spending and associate it with those things. And it couldn't be commingled with general dollars. You had to, because you were only authorized to spend it on certain kinds of activities. Now, there are other special revenue funds like the SPLOST revenues. Again, we can't just spend, we can't put those in with all the other monies because we designate those for specific kinds of projects. And then we have capital projects funds. That's where we, again, one of the key issues is that for capital spending, now capital projects are those that are expensive and last a long time. And so if it's expensive and lasts a long time, we want to think about that differently than we do about something that is kind of a regular, ordinary purchase. Now to give you a simplified example, when you go to the grocery store to buy milk, my guess is you probably spend about 30 seconds or less choosing which gallon of milk to buy. Why? Because it's something you do on a regular basis, right? You know, okay, I like this brand, I like whole milk, and I go and I know where it is, and I can get it on a regular basis. On the other hand, most of us don't buy automobiles on a regular basis, right? And so the process that we go through is often much more extensive. You might research it in depth. You've got to figure out how am I going to pay for it because it's much more expensive. Hopefully it's going to last a long time. And so we have a very different way of thinking about buying something that's expensive and lasts a long time. Well, we want that same kind of thinking to go on in the government. And so we asked it for kind of major expenditures, roads, bridges, some capital equipment like heavy equipment, machinery. Now, depending on the government, there might be some things that you and I might consider expensive, like an automobile, that become part of the regular operating budget. So I don't know what the number of police cruisers or law enforcement cruisers that they have here in Augusta, Richmond County, but my guess is it's a pretty substantial number, and they're probably buying 20 or 30 of those vehicles every year. So that has become kind of like a regular purchase to them, and they may not necessarily treat that as a capital expenditure with the same kind of analysis that you might if you were in, say, Hyra or Blythe, where they're only buying one every 10 or 15 years, possibly. And so, again, we want the capital projects to be separated, so we think about them differently. Lastly, there are a group of funds that we call trust and agency funds. These are fiduciary funds, things like the pension, where we have a long-term responsibility to use those funds and to track those because there are future obligations associated with those funds. So with that, let me highlight that in Georgia, as is the case in all other states, there is a requirement for states and local governments to have balanced budgets. Now, in Georgia, that covers the general fund, the special revenue funds, and debt service funds. And then for capital projects, the financing has to match the life cycle of the project. And so you can't, for example, let's say you're building a new city hall, and that city hall has an expected life of 30 years. You can't finance that over the course of 50 years, for example. Now, the state law also requires that it can't exceed 30 years, but the balanced budget simply means that revenues plus any fund balances, and that's the kind of savings that may have accumulated over past years, that when you add the two of those together, that has to equal the appropriations. And so when we talk about the budget, in the case of Augusta, they have already made sure that any cuts necessary to make sure revenues and expenditures are equal, they've already done that. So in Augusta, Richmond, the total budget for all funds for fiscal year 2024, which is ended in December 31st, 2024. So again, fiscal year, just to make sure everybody's on the same page, that's the year in which their spending ends. And for a lot of governments in the state of Georgia, the fiscal year ends in June. Now, there is some dynamics to that, and the fiscal year for Augusta, Richmond County ends at the end of the calendar year, so the calendar year and the fiscal year match. But when we make comparisons to other governments, there may be slight differences in what that fiscal year is compared to the fiscal year of Augusta, just for your reference. So in fiscal year 24, there was $1.57 billion in total appropriations. Now that included several areas of one-time funding. Some of that was from these ARPA funds that came in. Some of it was because of the expenses related to the hurricane cleanup, among other things. And as a result, the budget appropriations for fiscal year 2025 are significantly lower at $1.35 billion. And so now one of the challenges that they had in reaching that $1.35 billion, which was lower, is that they had a loss of about $7 million in addition to that they had to balance, and they did figure out a way to balance that. Now, to give you a little bit of a picture where that $1.35 billion is going, the general fund in 2025 is getting about $126 million. The law enforcement general fund is getting about $78 million. So just over half of what you might think of as general government spending in comparison is going towards the law enforcement spending. So in total general funds, it's about a third that's going towards the law enforcement spending. Special revenue funds account for about $140 million. Again, this is because there's some SPOS monies that aren't coming in fiscal year 25 that came in fiscal year 24. The Capital Projects Fund, that's about $400 million. Again, these are those long-term expensive things that are planned over time. Debt service is about 127. So we finance part of our capital projects. I say our as if I hope Tamika would adopt me, but it's part of Augusta's spending. And so, again, debt can be a reasonable strategy as long as it doesn't exceed the useful life of the project and it's used carefully. Sewerage, this includes some bonds for sewerage, is about 199. For water and sewerage, it's about 199 million. And then the other big ones are the enterprise fund for the airport. That's a $70 million operation. And I believe the chair probably knows much more about the uniqueness of that operation and the complexity of it than any of the rest of us would probably prefer to know. And so just as a percent of the total budget, this just gives you a picture. The general fund is only 9.3% of all of the spending that's going on and so even though that's what most people think about when they think about the government operations, it's still a relatively small, even if you include law enforcement, we're still only at about 15% of the total spending. The big place is the capital spending and then your enterprise funds. Now, where do the monies come from to pay for this? Now, this is just the general fund portion. And so the general fund portion, property taxes are the most significant, followed by the local option sales tax. Those are about even. The property tax wins out slightly. And then you have the next two are the title ad valorem tax. That's the tax that you pay on the new car purchase. And then there's the electric franchise tax. That's the other major revenue source. These revenue sources, I only listed those that were above the $3 million or more. So the others, even though $2.9 million seems like a lot to me, in comparison, it's still relatively small compared to the others. So these represent about 57, almost 58% of the total revenues coming in to Augusta Richmond. Major expenditures by department in the general fund. Again, I didn't list some of the more nuanced pieces of the puzzle, but the largest expenses are around, and again, I only listed those things that were about $2 million or higher, with health and general welfare at $1.8 million. But the big ones are judicial at $29 million. And then 16 million for culture and recreation. And then you've got about 12 million for operating transfers out. These are to cover costs in other funds that they need to balance out. And then you've got the law enforcement and fire protection that together are just over $100 million. So that gives you a kind of snapshot of kind of the magnitude of the budget. It is a complex and and large issue, and you'll be making decisions around what taxes you want to include in your recommendation around the charter as allowed under state code. So that concludes my foray into the Augusta Richmond budget.
Questions from the members? Miss Angela Nichols.
Good morning, sir. I have a couple of questions. You mentioned the loss of $7 million. What was that in regards to?
So those were American, the ARPA funds, and they had anticipated them, but they then weren't available.
Okay. And then you, for fiscal year '24, it said that it included Hurricane Helene funds. Wouldn't '25 also include some? So
Yeah, there will be some of that, but it was the Hurricane Helene expenses.
Uh-huh.
And so the revenues that will come in will actually be applied back to get some of those expenses eventually. We're waiting on FEMA to actually get monies transferred. That has taken longer than most people had anticipated around some of that. But you're right, there will still be some Helene expenses that will be in fiscal year '25.
So do we know, is 1.35 billion generally what we, because I'm guessing 2023 and the couple of years before that would have COVID funds. So
That's
that
right.
wouldn't
That's
give
right.
an accurate reflection of our budget.
And so it appears to me, and granted, I have not had a time to make a super deep dive into the, it's only about 235 pages. And so, yeah, my colleagues were a bit astonished when I said I'd be willing to take on the task of giving you a snapshot of the budget. So I think it's probably closer to the level that is kind of the more natural level, if you will, of spending. But some of that we'll have to see under the guidance of the administrator and the commission on where they end up long term.
One more question, I'm sorry. Recently, I attended a commission meeting where they were talking about the finance director and the title and one of the questions that was brought up is for a budget that's close to 1.4 billion. In your experience, what is the title of the person that oversees the finance department?
It is not uncommon for them to be called the chief financial officer, but it varies dramatically by community. For example, my daughter works for the city of Norfolk, Virginia. Their budget's about this size, and the head of their budget is the budget director. Now they have a finance officer that deals over the accounting side, but the budgeting side is separate, and it's headed up by the budget director.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Cole?
Well, I noticed 29% on water and sewage. Can you expound on that, and also on health and welfare?
Sure. So water and sewerage, those are there we go. Those are enterprise funds, and so that's for the drinking water and the treatment of wastewater. And it does not include, I believe, stormwater, which is a separate fund. And so that's covering all of the charges that are coming in and the cost of delivering that water, replacing the water lines, expanding the system, making sure it's operational, et cetera, et cetera. And you had a second part of that.
The health and welfare, I noticed that was the smallest budget. I think it was on the next page.
Mm-hmm.
Probably following that.
Right here, yeah.
Yes.
Health and welfare, only 1.4%.
Yeah.
And in all honesty, I don't remember. I'd have to go back and look. But happy to get that answer to you.
Thank you.
Mr. Pearson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. When I look at the numbers for law enforcement, as a research-based institution, what is the why? Why is it so high?
So one of the reasons that law enforcement, it is not uncommon to be in the 30 to 40% of the total cost of a general fund. One of the reasons that cost is so high is that it tends to have a very high portion of full-time employees, just the number of officers. And so when you look at, law enforcement typically makes up 30 to 40% of the general fund. If you separate that out and look at just that 30 to 40%, about 60% of that is in personnel costs. So salaries, benefits, et cetera. The other portion of the costs are related to ongoing training is a significant expense for law enforcement. Vehicles and maintenance is a significant expense, as well as things like making sure they can have their practice of firearms training and those kinds of things.
So that's the why.
Yeah,
These things that you named.
that's right.
Because I've often wondered, why it was so high. Are we working? Are we dealing with society on the? Can I finish my question?
Oh, yes.
Are we dealing with society on the front end or the back end or what have you? Because to me, when I look at those numbers, I also think about maybe a public educational system here. So is it a mirror? Are those numbers a reflection or a mirror of what we see in our public education system based on your research? Based on your research, I'm not talking about global.
Sure.
In Augusta, Georgia.
I can't speak with certainty about Augusta, but what I can say is that in general, what we do see is that we see that part of the cost is driven, a very large portion of encounters that the law enforcement have to deal with have to do with some form of substance abuse or mental health. That drives a significant portion, and there are some real efforts at trying to curb some of those costs on the front end and also defer some of those costs by shifting the models, by having more behavioral health folks responding with law enforcement is part of the strategy. So there's some strategies to try and shift those costs, because I think most people would argue that if we can get ahead of some of those things occurring, so if we can treat mental health or substance abuse issues before it becomes a criminal behavior, it's much cheaper to treat that way. We often treat homelessness, for example, as a criminal behavior, and if we could treat it for the substance abuse and mental health issues that are often significant drivers, we could shift part of that cost. And so that there is a significant belief that we could tame some of those law enforcement costs by doing things a little bit different.
Okay, as we move forward, just trying to get away from generic or adjectives that we could use in any situation globally. And again, I'm specifically want to focus in on how to better Augusta.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. Next one up would be Mr. Coleman.
Thank you. You mentioned stormwater fees. That is a special, different tax. How does Augusta compare to other municipalities our size on how they collect it and the oversight of it and what department oversees it and what checks and balances are in there? And another question is, and I don't know if you can answer this or not, is it a disadvantage? Because I personally believe it drives businesses and future industries out of this county because of the extra cost they'd have to incur. And do you know what percentage of our stormwater fee that's collected goes toward the administrative cost and what percentage goes to actually fixing infrastructure like storm drains? All I've ever seen done in this community is people cutting grass on the side of the road. And it confuses me because, like Calhoun Expressway, I was informed years ago that was a state highway, and the state pays the city of Augusta to maintain it. So if the city of Augusta is getting revenues to maintain the grass on Calamity Expressway, why are the taxpayers having to use stormwater fees to cut the grass? So they're getting paid twice, once from the taxpayer and one from the state to cut the same road. Thank you.
So the really easy answer for me is I have no idea how Augusta compares to the other communities. But that is something that we could theoretically look at if that was the will of the commission. I think the overarching question for the committee is whether or not that's a fee or a tax that you want to have as part of the overall picture of what is possible. I think we would need to turn to Administrator Allen to get some more clarification on some of those issues.
Thank you, Dr. Pacer. Dr. McCorn?
Yeah, I had a question about how we fund public education. The relationship between the entities that actually do it and how the city is involved in that, and if there's consideration to correlations to, for instance, health and welfare and public safety, there ought to be some direct correlation to the quality of education.
Sure, and there is an abundant research literature that suggests that there is a strong correlation between the quality of education and the health and well-being of the community. Augusta, Richmond, the educational system is separate, and so the consolidated government does not provide any of the funding for public education. And that is the case. Do we still have any combined school districts, city school districts in Georgia? Any city-controlled school districts in Georgia? They're all independent now. So we used to, there was a time when we had some city-controlled school districts where the city had to give budget approval, but that is no longer the case. They're now all independent, have their own essentially taxing authority.
Mr. Wimberly?
I want to go back to the law enforcement, and you were talking about the mental health treatment. Knowing the mental health situation we have, not only in Augusta, but in the state of Georgia, I don't see a lot of funds going from the law department to mental health. Now, a great deal of that expense in the law department, law enforcement, is incarceration costs. Am I correct?
Yes, a portion of that is incarceration.
A great portion of that, which is almost equal to the salary that you're paying for law enforcement.
I would have to double check on the numbers on that precisely. What I do want to kind of bring us back to is we want to think about the things that you're going to have decision-making authority on how you can shape the charter. And there are going to be some things around law enforcement operations, for example, that are going to be much more kind of procedural, if you will, that depending on the form of government, will either be guided by the mayor, the council, an administrator, or manager, depending on what decisions you make on the form of government. And so it will have implications to that, but there will not likely be a section that articulates specific kinds of expectations around law enforcement in the way they perform their duties, for example.
Thank you, Mr. Wimberly. Mr. Cole?
One last question. Culture and recreation. Can you expound on what that all entails?
No, but. It includes things like parks, it includes things like the general recreation programs of the county, and it, I believe, includes some funding for some nonprofit operations for cultural arts but I'd have to look more carefully again at it.
The only reason why I asked that, because I noticed that was higher than the public safety, which is the law.
Yeah.
It's like 16.
So the public safety isn't the law enforcement piece. It is a separate public safety piece that includes other things. I'd have to look at the budget document to remember exactly what all the public safety was, but it did not include, that is not the general law enforcement operations of the consolidated government.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. Mr. Fouché?
If the federal government is successful in eliminating the Department of Education, and that goes back to the state, what preparation do we need to make for our charter to receive those funds and process them to the best of our ability?
That's a very good question, and I think it's one of the great unknowns. It is likely that any transfer back of monies or responsibilities would go from the state directly to the school districts. And so now there may be some things that, because there are some agreements, for example, between the sheriff's office and the schools for public safety officers, among other things, I'm sure. But to a large extent, it is not clear to me how that's going to impact the consolidated government directly. But again, that's one of the things that we're going to need to look at more carefully before we can give you a definitive response.
Would you recommend that this committee take up school choice and include that within the charter recommendations?
I think that is outside of the traditional kinds of boundaries that we see for local government charters.
Thank you.
Thank you. All good questions and terrific comments and responses back. Are there any other comments, questions for Dr. Facer? Okay, that is
Virginia Cody.
Ms. Cody.
Cody, yeah.
I want to go back to the stormwater fee. So do all the areas in Augusta pay the stormwater fee?
I don't know the answer to that, but my guess is the way it generally works in most communities, stormwater fees are generally based on the impermeable surfaces, so parking lots, rooftops, those kinds of things. And so it's usually applied to all properties, and it's based on the impermeable surfaces of those. Now, there's some, we could get into a long discussion about why stormwater fees may or may not make sense, but in a community where you have lots of nonprofits and other non-governmental organizations that might be tax exempt under, say, property taxes, stormwater fees is one of the ways that you can get them to help cover some of those costs. That's sometimes part of the argument behind some of that. But again, we'd have to look more carefully.
Thank you, Ms. Cole. Are there any other comments or questions? All right, Dr. Facer, excellent jobs. May I ask that you please forward this presentation so it can be shared with the members?
I believe we already, have we done that? Yep, we've already done that.
We'll go back and dig it out again then.
It just arrived right at the beginning of the meeting.
I see.
So.
Very good. Thank you for doing so.
Okay.
Next topic on the agenda, I am going to request that our clerk walk us through the comment procedure currently employed by the Augusta Commission so that we can attempt to bring our procedures in alignment with that for uniformity's sake.
Yes, ma'am, Madam Chair. The commission allows for delegations to come and make public comment during their sessions. In their rules of procedure, public comments are limited to 5 minutes. However, it's at the discretion of the commission. Sometimes that goes over 2 or 3 seconds, maybe. But nevertheless, the public would have to submit their requests on the Thursday preceding the meeting, which is held on Tuesday by 9 a.m., to be placed on the commission agenda. And once you've spoken, you are not allowed to return on the same subject matter for, I think it's 60 days, 90 days, yeah.
Madam Clerk, may I ask who enforces the 5-minute limit?
The mayor, the chair, whoever, committee chair or the mayor, whichever the public delegation is addressed to.
Thank you. Are there questions from this body? Ms. Bakos?
So I do have one concern, especially because normally with the commission, when they are a delegation, they're talking about random things and not necessarily things that are on the agenda. Our agenda is due to Ms. Bonner the Monday before our meeting so that she can publish it that day if possible, which means I think we need to keep that in mind, that the public needs to see what's on our agenda so that they know whether or not they want to sign up to speak. So when we're thinking about a deadline, I think that we need to keep that in mind. Also, I would suggest following similar to the commission where the public comments come at the beginning, because if we're voting on something and they come at the end, then it kind of makes their voice irrelevant.
Madam Chair.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Bonner.
Yes, ma'am. And in actuality, that's what you approved last meeting, that you would meet on the 1st and 3rd of each month with the public comments coming at the beginning. So you voted on that at your last meeting to do that.
So if we're to direct someone who wish to make comments, they go to the AugustaGA.gov website.
Yes, ma'am, and they would fill out a form, a request to appear form. The form with all of the directions and the instructions are listed on the form. You can do it electronically or you could come to our office for a hard copy. The major point to that is it has to be in the clerk's office by 9 a.m. on the Thursday preceding the meeting.
Even for our meeting, since ours is on a Thursday and not Tuesday, like the commission meetings?
Yes, ma'am. We would design it according to your meeting schedule.
So what day if we continue moving forward with Thursdays, what day would you need the public to have those forms in by?
Okay, the commission meets on Tuesday. They're required the preceding Thursday. So you can use that timeline for your meetings as well.
So hypothetically, they would need to have it in by Monday?
Yes, ma'am.
Which means, can we adjust the agenda and have it to her so that you can get it out? Like if we were to give it to you on Friday or the Thursday beforehand, if possible, would you be able to publish that in time for the public to see the agenda so that they know whether or not they want to speak?
That should be possible.
Well, let me say, the public does not see the commission agenda prior to making requests to appear. That's not really the driving force. They usually already have decided what it is that they want to address the commission regarding. It could have been previous meeting matters or something that they're particularly interested in sharing with the commission. But if it's on Thursday at 9 a.m., usually the commission meeting agenda is posted because that would have to be on the agenda. We usually post the agenda on Friday, and the commission meeting will be the following Tuesday.
So I think that we as a committee need to consider, if I'm a member of the general public, I don't know what's going to be talked about unless we can give an overview at the end of each meeting on what the subject will be, like maybe not the agenda. I see what you're saying, Ms. Bonner, And I'm not trying to complicate it, so maybe that responsibility can be on us to say, okay, at the next meeting, this is what's going to be on the agenda, so that it does give the public a chance to sign up to speak if they choose to.
All right, that's easy enough. Mr. Plunkett?
A couple of observations at the same time. As far as the 5-minute limitation, oftentimes the speaker is inquired of questions from the body, from this committee, and usually that extends the 5 minutes so that you don't, by your question, it does not exceed that. The second thing is that, remember, you're also having at least 3 public hearings. That would be an opportunity for speakers to come that did not have to sign up as a delegation in advance. So that would be opportunity to be heard without the issue there. The other thing is, I believe that that the chair and the institute were supposed to try to get together and come up with a rough outline of the subject matters, and so that potentially, if that was developed, while it may not be ironclad that it'll be heard, people at least would have an idea that at the next meeting or the following meeting, this is going to be heard, so that they could be on a delegation. And oftentimes, if you're talking about a subject matter that they signed up for, they can just simply withdraw their opportunity, or alternatively, speak in advance of a meeting 2 weeks down the road.
Thank you, Mr. Plunkett. Mr. Pearson?
Okay, Madam Chair, just want to ask Ms. Bonner a question. If I come as a group, is it a total of 5 minutes? Can the minutes be yielded to another member within the group? How's that handled?
You could do it that way if you wanted to divvy it up between the group. The main objective there is 5 minutes.
That's right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cole?
And I totally agree with Mr. Plunkett and Ms. Bakos about pre-publishing the agenda. So therefore, when the public comes, they can stay on topic with what we're actually covering that particular time. So I definitely agree with that.
Okay, any additional comments? Let us proceed then. Thank you, Ms. Bonner, for that explanation. Mr. Plunkett?
What I will do, based on this conversation today, is try to come up with some rules of procedure, basically a 5-minute limitation, speaking through the chair, not to direct the speakers or delegations do not speak directly to the commission, but they go through the chair, things of that nature. I will model it similar to what the commission rules are, but that y'all can have a little bit of, y'all can adopt them or approve them or, object. However, I have no pride of authorship when I bring things, but that way you'll have a little bit more of a opportunity to see how that should flow. And I'll do that before y'all's next meeting. In fact, I'll try to get them out so they can be circulated in advance.
Thank you. Mr. Wimberly?
Just a clarity for myself. Are we trying to set topic for the delegations to speak on by setting our agenda ahead? Or are we just trying to give the delegation an opportunity to speak to the body here? Which is we trying to do? If we send, we got to set our agenda out in time enough for them to put in their request to appear based off what we're going to speak. That sounds like we're setting the topic for them to talk about. We're not here to set the topic for the public. We're here to hear their comments. Am I correct on that, or am I totally wrong?
Partially. I'm going to ask Dr. Facer to answer this. The team that has been employed by the Augusta Commission to guide this process has a series of modules that they're planning on presenting. For instance, the May 15th module deals with demographics, and we're at our pleasure, if we would like to include a local subject matter expert or somebody that we think could bring something to the table, that certainly should be included on the agenda as well. But Dr. Facer, if you'd like to address how the modules are formulated and structured for the benefit of this committee.
Sure, thank you. So partly what we're is still in the process of doing is identifying kind of a strategy for going through the charter document so that it has some kind of flow to it, if you will. So, for example, one of the first things that we will do is we will walk you through a number of items in the charter that we think are either technical, simple edits, or things that we would recommend moving to, say, an appendix. So something that we can kind of get things that are relatively non-controversial moved out of the way so that we can then move into more substantive issues such as form of government, administrator versus manager, taxes, et cetera, et cetera. And so what we are working on doing, and some of that can change depending on the flow of we may find that you all move a little faster on a couple of things or need to move a little slower. And so those modules, if you will, are subject to some modification as we move through the process. But the idea is to give us a kind of game plan so that we can address these in a timely fashion.
Thank you, Dr. Pacer. Ms. Bakos.
I just wanted to address Mr. Wimberly's question. So I brought it up not to try to control the public and what they're speaking on. They're free to speak on whatever they'd like to. But if a topic of discussion that is coming up, if they have that schedule ahead of time, then they know, okay, this is one that's important to me. I want to make sure I can speak on this one. So it's just used as a tool to help the public choose maybe when is the more relevant time for them to speak. But I don't think anybody's talking about limiting what they can speak on.
Thank you, Ms. Bakos. Ms. Barnhill Turnley.
Thank you. Dr. Pacer, how many modules are we talking about?
I don't know the answer to that yet.
I mean, is it more than 10, less than 20? I mean,
So what we had kind of originally envisioned was about a dozen meetings. So that's one of the things that we'll talk with the chair about at our next meeting, which is actually going to be later today. So.
Okay.
Mr. Wimberly? Ms. Cody?
I was just going to say, it wasn't too dry, like people watch, well, they watch the meetings and then they have comments. So, not necessarily trying to stay on topic, but just allowing the public, to speak. But then, Ms. Angela, I'm sorry, she addressed it, so thank you.
Thank you. All right. Mr. Marvin Cole.
For the team. Now, this is my understanding as becoming a member of this Charter Review Committee. Was to update and modernize this, correct? Now, I'm somewhat of an orderly person, and I assumed that we was going to start here and continue to move through this document to modernize it and update it. To me, it's like a Pulp Fiction that we're doing right now. We're jumping to the back, coming back to the front, and all this type of stuff. That's kind of confusing to me, and I'm quite sure it's confusing to the public, because I am part of the public too. So I think if we, to me, it's a little difficult to do it up here on a panel and not a round table. Military for over 20 plus years, and we sat around round tables, updating documents, updating policies, and so forth and so on, right there. And then we brought it back to our command team, and then we reviewed it, put it out, and they made adjustments right then. I consider that the public. When we put something out, they able to come and talk about it if we're talking about a specific area in this charter.
Sure, and I want to make sure that not confusing the matter. So when I talked about moving some things around, it's simply to get them kind of out of the way so we could focus on the substantive things moving essentially through the charter. Typically, what we typically do is we move through section by section. And so we typically do it in order as it flows.
Okay. All right, so I definitely look forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right. Thank you for your input, all of you. Let's come to the matter of the meetings. It has come to our attention that we did fine with May, other than we were wasting an opportunity to meet because it's a 5-week month. And then we got to June, where one of our meetings was not going to be able to be held because of a national holiday. And that then threw off the rotation and cadence of our meetings. So I trust that all of you have been able to read the email that was sent out last evening, recapping potential dates. We had a few conflicts with the team from Athens as well, all of which were resolved if we would reconsider our motion from 2 weeks ago and adopt an every other week meeting schedule. I have to believe that would help Ms. Bonner somewhat as well.
I believe that still stands.
It does still stand.
Yes.
It does still stand. I'm waiting for comments from my fellow commissioners and perhaps a second motion.
And Madam Chair, if I could, that motion did include public comment at the beginning of the meeting, so.
It'll have to be included in the next one as well. That's correct. Mr. Coleman.
I strongly agree with what you sent out on the email every other week on the dates.
Thank you. Ms. Bakos?
So I have a concern about us changing not necessarily the meeting dates as much as I have a concern about us having a goal of completing our work in December and delivering our completed recommendations to the legislative delegation by then. The resolution that was approved by the commissioners states that we have until the end of March of next year with the possibility of an extension if needed. It does not say that we can't finish earlier, but I also think that it's putting undue pressure on everybody. Just the homework that was sent to us the other day was over 150 pages. And we do have other things that are going on in our lives as well. Plus balancing that and the public meetings and everything else, that's a lot. And I think we're making very, very important decisions, and we don't need to be rushing through that. I am also a little bit concerned that we are supposed to be an independent body, and I don't think, whether it's the city or the legislative delegation, I don't think that anybody needs to be interfering with that and trying to rush us or alter the process at all.
So if I may respond before we move on to other speakers, it is not as much interference as it is trying to fold other calendar requirements into our schedules as well. We were speaking with Lonnie informally here earlier, and it's more of a goal rather than a requirement, so to speak, because the legislature convenes roughly about January 10th, give or take, every year, and it wraps up sometime in the middle of March. In order for them to undertake reviewing our product and putting it out in time for the election designated for local issues, which occurs in May of '26, all has to align. Now, what happens if we don't have it done by the end of the year? They're not going to shoot us, but I think it's a worthy goal, an ambitious goal to be sure, but I believe it's a worthy goal. Dr. Facer will acknowledge you out of order, but go ahead.
Thank you very much. I do want to note that it will take us some time, once the committee reaches its, set of recommendations, it does take us some time to completely draft the recommendations in the report. Now, as much work as we can do along the way to minimize that, we will do, but just note that if the last meeting is held, just for hypothetical sake, on the 1st of December, that doesn't mean the 2nd of December we have a report with recommendations, right? It's going to take us, and December's a tough month for us because we essentially lose about the last third of the month with the university being closed. And we're not supposed to work then. So it's one of those interesting things. So.
Thank you for that comment. I also understand that there is nothing magical about December 31st, that if the legislature is going into session in January and we produce products sometime in January, they still have 3 to 4 weeks to act on it. And I agree with Angela's point and with Lonnie's point that that shouldn't be our problem, but from a pragmatic standpoint, it actually does become our problem a bit. So did you have any additional comments?
I did just want to point out that when the resolution was approved by the commissioners, there was never an end goal date of getting it on the May ballot for next year. So although it would be great because, you don't want to sit there and have this huge time, at the same time, these are very important changes. Mm-hmm. It may not happen for another 20 years.
Exactly.
So we need to make sure that we're being thorough and fair. And again, I don't like the legislature, whoever it was, putting pressure on us to move faster. I don't know where that was coming from. I did speak to members of the legislative delegation this morning, quite a few of them, and not one of them was aware of that. So I don't know who's speaking on behalf of them, but I'm not sure that they have the authority to do so.
Duly noted, and you are correct about that. Dr. McCorn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm working really diligently to align my schedule with the required meeting dates, but just wanted to register to my colleagues. I do have an itinerary where a couple of those dates are going to be a conflict. I'm fully committed to the work, but just wanted folks to know that I will have some challenges, scheduling challenging. Thanks.
It's a lot to ask of anybody. Mr. Cole will be gone on the 15th of this month to attend the happy occasion of the graduation of his daughter from the Navy. So you're not the only one that's going to have. I've got one myself. Mr. Powell.
I think that with the complexity of what this committee has been charged with looking at, I don't see how we can do a credible job by the end of the year. I think that the original order that created this particular committee was for a year, and we lost 3 months before we actually got rolling. I think the end of March or in that neighborhood is probably going to be making sure that we can cover everything that we need to cover and do it thoroughly. I think that the end of the year is going to be pushing it. I would like to see us continue on until maybe the middle of March. We would have something for the Institute to go over to make sure that we haven't violated any laws. But I just don't see how, as what we're going to have to go through, and we're just skimming the surface right now. When we get into the parts where we are going to make recommendations for changes in the government, it's going to take a lot more time than what the presentations that, and they've been excellent, by the way. I think that the recommendations we're going to have to make down the line are going to be some hard choices, and I just don't think that pushing it to be more brief is in the best interest of the citizens of Augusta, Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Powell. I think I can speak for everybody on this committee. Nobody wants to make mistakes with this, and time may have to slide. Mr. Cole?
Yes, ma'am, I totally agree with that. Guys, it's been 30 years. What's a few more months? You got to ask yourself that. It's been 30 years. And our approach to this, I'm hoping that everybody's on the same sheet of music, that we want to be thorough and do what's best for the future of the Augusta, Richmond County community. This panel right here, we got more time behind us than we got in front of us. So it's about our kids and our grandkids. And we want to make sure we set this up properly. We want to do a thorough job, what's best for the Augusta, Richmond County community. So if it takes more time, so be it. We're here now. We chose to do this. This is the group 30 years later that has said, yes, we're gonna update this charter. So let's hold fast right here. And when it gets done, it gets done, but I guarantee you, it's not gonna take 30 years.
From your mouth to God's ears. Thank you, Mr. Cole. Agreed. Mr. Fouché.
I think of this as being a backward planning goal. If we meet every other Thursday, we get 4 additional meetings in before the end of the year. Well, that's not true, it's 3. But January would be a 4th meeting. So I agree with you, Mr. Cole. I agree with you, Ms. Bacos. I don't know that we can complete this work before March. I'd love to see us think it's possible and try to and accomplish our chair's objective for the election. So let's try.
We're gonna try.
Thank you.
Let's try.
It's a good goal.
Yeah.
Whether we can meet it or not remains to be seen.
It doesn't require it to be done. Right. It's just a goal, and it's a backward planning goal.
That's right. Okay, Mr. Wimberly.
At our meeting, the last meeting, one of the things that we voted on was turning off our cell phones so we wouldn't be influenced by Commissioner texting us. So all I say is that turn off the emails that are coming in, or whoever they're coming into, for outside of this commissioner, and to try to influence what we're doing. The commission, the Richmond County Commission, has voted on us getting this done. They voted because we didn't get started in January, that March was the beginning, and the end of March of 2026 is when we should be completed. So January is no longer part of the equation, as I understand it. It started in March the 1st and gonna go to March the 31st, 2026. So therefore, that's what we're looking for in the process of giving us a guidance. The attorney reminded us that if we are not completed in March, the end of March, that we can ask for more time. So therefore, anything to do with the delegation is mute because they're not part of our schedule, our time. So when that comes up again, we just refer them back to the commissioner and have the commissioner to give us any additional instruction that they want us to have in completing this process. That's what I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bacos.
I just wanted some clarity from Dr. Facer. You said it would take you some time to get the document prepared after we complete our work. Just roundabout, approximately how much time would that be?
What we have typically seen is anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks.
So potentially, if we finish the end of November, because he's already established we can't finish in December, then it would still also be too late for it to get it to the legislature potentially by the deadline. I think it was January 10th, wasn't it?
Well, the legislature's deadline, there is a drop dead date. We don't know exactly what that is, but it is not, it's not January 10th. It is likely sometime in mid-February.
Okay. But essentially, we would still, if it's mid-February, we'd still have to finish probably by the end of November in order for you guys to have time to complete it, which is shortening our time even more. I think that's rushing it too much. I do want to also suggest real quick, if we are going to vote on this, before we vote, if we can allow public comment beforehand.
Mr. Pearson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really don't know how to say this, but I've been here in Augusta for over 30-something years, waiting on something to happen. And I've attended a number of commissioner meetings, a number of them. And you often hear the phrase, kicking things down the road. Macon, you got all of these cities moving forward. What does it take, Dr. Facer, to bring about a little bit more sophistication within this city? Because I'm afraid that we're never going to get where we need to be because we are always in the process of what does it take? What will it take to move this culture within this city? We're forever prolonging something. Children are dying in the street. Things aren't changing. The visuals we want to see, we aren't seeing them, and we've been waiting for 30-something years in terms of. So what will it take to get this body of people or get this city moving? What will it take, Dr. Facer?
If I may, Madam Chair, I think it takes leadership, and I think that's the role that y'all have the opportunity to play, is to shape that culture. I think you're very fortunate that you have some dynamic leaders. You heard from Administrator Allen today, and she has some great ideas about the performance measurements, and that's essentially trying to push a change in the culture of the workforce. So it's really about that leadership at the end of the day. That's what changes culture. That's what shapes progress. And I would hope that y'all you take on that mantle.
Dr. Facer, I agree with you as it relates to Administrator Allen and the mayor and new sheriff that we got, and folks that have come on the commission, but if we can't, what can they do if we can't rally behind them and do what it takes to get there? Because I don't foresee, based on what I'm hearing today, and maybe we may never get there. And I think we should be working to get there, changing our mindset, our culture, our way of looking at things. That's just my opinion. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wimberly.
Okay, we keep bringing up the legislature, trying to get on their calendar. I think we need to just go past that. Mr. Pierce, I totally agree with you that the culture is what holding us back. But if we concentrate on changing the charter based off the best for the citizen of Augusta, we'll get there. And we try to change the charter based off anything else, we're gonna have problems. So let's think about the citizen. That's my opinion. And then once what's good for them, it will work out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wimberly. Ms. Barnhill-Turley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to bring us back to the task at hand. Ms. Bonner, want to make sure that based on what happened last meeting, we have approved meeting every other week. Is that correct? Because we've heard so many different things recently. So is that what was agreed on and voted on and approved?
The motion was to approve scheduling the regular meetings on the first and third Thursdays of the month at 11 a.m. with citizen public comments first.
Okay, then I'd like to, that's not what I thought, but that's okay. I'd like to make a motion that the motion is that we meet every other week on Thursday at 10 o'clock with the caveat that we will schedule public comment meetings as appropriate.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Discussion?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Your thing's not on.
I had already asked before we vote on anything that we do accept public comments first, because if they can comment afterwards, then it negates their voice.
Madam Chair,
Ms. Barton?
I'm confused as to why we need to have public comment on when we're going to meet. I'm missing it. That's not tracking for me.
It may be relevant to them and them feeling heard in this process.
But I mean, they can watch, there are multiple opportunities to see these meetings. They can come in person, and we're also live streaming. So explain that to me. Not that I don't think it's necessary, I just don't understand why.
So moving forward, are we gonna then decide what they can speak on? Because if we aren't gonna, you know what I mean? Like, where is that line gonna be drawn at? If today we're gonna decide whether or not they should have input, then moving forward, we should decide what issues they can speak on as well.
Can I make I would like to vote on the motion first. We can take up the matter of public speaking in a moment.
Point of
Okay,
personal privilege.
Ms. Turnley,
Yes, ma'am.
Madam Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
Can Ms. Turnley repeat her motion for clarity so that we'll have it? Now, I have Ms. Turnley, I didn't get.
Okay. My motion is that this committee meets every other Thursday at 10 o'clock with the caveat that we will schedule public meetings as necessary based on the information. That was my motion.
It was seconded by Mr. Cole. Mr. Plunkett?
That we're understanding that's a motion to amend the bylaws, because the bylaws were adopted last week to say that it was that, so.
Okay, that was, then I misunderstood.
It was understood
Okay.
in your motion possibly.
Do I need to rephrase that, or I'm good as I am?
I don't think it's necessary, I'm just
Okay.
letting people know that.
All right, great, thank you.
So the motion is to set a schedule. To amend when the schedule occurs. Every other Thursday, so that everybody can plan on a 10 a.m. Do we have any other comments that we'd like to address?
With public comments as necessary, she said.
Okay.
There was also a point of privilege, I believe, that was down this way.
Okay. And I think that is Mr. Wimberly.
Yeah, I'm a little confused. You saying we're going to publish our agenda every other week? Or are we meeting every other week?
Have to do both legally.
So we're only going to meet once a week?
Once every other week, every 14 days.
So what does the term week
Regardless of
come-
what month it is, it just carries on
So
every
what,
other week.
what does the term week come in at? What does the week?
Every other week.
I don't-
14 days. It's bi-weekly.
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
If you would, it'd be helpful to have the members be recognized, and
Yes.
again, it's hard for the clerk to understand when we're,
Understand.
I appreciate the willingness to clarify, but it's very difficult for note-taking.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Again, I'm maybe just.
So Mr.
pig-headed.
Wimberly, the dates we sent out last evening, today is the 1st. 2 weeks from today will be the 15th. 2 weeks beyond that is May 29th. And I thought you were the one that proposed this a couple weeks ago.
I propose that we meet every other Thursday.
And
In
that's
the
what
morning.
that's what the motion is for today as well.
Okay. It's just that you're throwing the term week in there, and that's confusing me.
Okay. All right.
Just
Are there
use
any
the
other
term
questions,
area.
Ms. Bacos?
And I'm sorry, you're throwing the term month in there, and so that's confusing me right there.
Understood. Thank you for asking. Ms. Bacos?
I just want to point out that I did say that I think that maybe we need to do a motion to have public comment at the beginning before we vote on anything. And when I brought that up, when we started discussing the meetings, a couple of people up here said, we're not going to vote on this, and here we are to vote without public comment beforehand. So I feel like
Motion then?
okay, well, I would like to motion then that we hear from the public before voting on this, because when we're talking about every other week, that was also the schedule that was proposed based upon a December timeline. So I think that needs to be considered as well.
Madam,
All right. Is there a second for that motion?
I make a motion to hear from the public before we vote on our meeting schedule.
Is there a second for that motion? Then I believe that motion fails. Do we have any additional comments about setting the schedule? Let's call upon Mr. Fouché.
Madam Chair, thank you very much. There are two motions on the floor with 2 seconds to meet every other Thursday. I move that we go ahead and vote on those two motions.
Ms. Bonner, would you like to read the first? I'm only
Have two motions.
aware of one motion, but
One motion, yeah.
that had a first and a second. And that was to meet biweekly, every other week, on Thursdays at 10 a.m.
Madam Chair, I also believe there's a question of the public comment part. Can we vote on that separately and let's at least get one thing done before we leave here today?
And I believe you, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I believe you said as necessary.
The public comment?
Yes.
I'm talking about the public. I want to make sure that I'm clear. I'm talking about the public meetings, not the public comments. So maybe I use the wrong phrasing. It's the public meetings as necessary. I'm not dealing with the public comment part at all. These are actual structured meetings.
Are we saying public hearings as
The
necessary?
public hearings, yes. I'm sorry. That's my
Okay.
incorrect term.
All right,
Hearing.
so public hearings as necessary.
Yes, ma'am.
Any additional comments, Ms. Virginia?
Thank you. I prefer the original one that we agreed on last time we met, the first and the third. I mean, then Ms. Barkus was saying, like, why are we rushing it? And so how did we get to every other Thursday? But I propose that we keep it the way it was, the first and the third. And so you have two proposals, I guess, and we can vote.
Was there a second for that?
Second.
Okay. So
That's Ms. Virginia Cole and Mr. Wimley.
Second.
Dr. McCorn as well. So my understanding of the procedure is we vote on the second motion first and then return to the first?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, could you please read that motion one more time, please?
It's for the committee to meet the first and third Thursdays of each month at 10 a.m. with citizen public comments first.
Okay.
That was Ms. Cody, I'm sorry, and Mr. Wimley. That was the substitute motion.
All right, please cast your votes. So who is not? There we go. Okay.
That motion fails 5-6, with Mr. McCorn voting yes, Ms. Backus voting yes, Ms. Cody voting yes, Mr. Wembley voting yes, Mr. Pearson voting yes. Voting no, Ms. Wilhelmy, Ms. Turnley, Mr. Cole, Mr. Powell, Mr. Coleman, and Mr. Fouché.
Thank you, Ms. Bonner. Would you also kindly read the first motion?
The original motion was to meet every other Thursday and to schedule public hearings as necessary.
Okay, please cast your votes.
That motion carries 7-4, with Ms. Wilhelmy voting yes, Ms. Turnley yes, Mr. Cole yes, Mr. Powell yes, Mr. Coleman yes, Mr. Fouché yes, Mr. Pearson yes. Voting no, Dr. McCorn, Ms. Bacchus, Ms. Cody, and Mr. Wembley.
Thank you all. Did you want to offer to codify the fact that we'll start with public comments on the agendas? Offer a motion to that effect?
I'd like to propose a motion to start with public comment at the beginning of each meeting.
Second.
So Ms. Bakos made that motion, Mr. Cole seconded it. Are there any comments? If not, please cast your vote.
That motion carries 10-1, with Mr. Powell voting no.
Thank you all. And Ms. Bonner, thank you.
You're welcome.
For hanging in there with us. On that happy note, are there any comments from the public that would like to be made?
Oh, let me put out some.
Mr. Ben Hassan?
See what time it is first.
Set your
See,
clock.
good morning. Good morning. You know, I just want to, I appreciate the opportunity to have a couple of comments. Mr. Pearson made a very, very valid comment about being up 30 years. I've been coming to meetings almost 30 years, and I served about 8 years. And he asked, how do we change and move this city forward? The first thing the leadership do is abide by its own policies. The commission sent you all a document which you all approved, or which you all accepted, in terms of who can influence you all. You all are an independent body. Nobody can influence you all. You all made a decision about your meetings. You all made a decision about all of that. The second thing you made a decision about when the public speak. So these are rules that you all have made yourself. And so it's a matter about you abiding by your own rules. That's the biggest problem we have anywhere. And where you don't have people who respect the rules, we have nothing but outlaws. So that's my real concern in terms of what was before you all about when the community was going to be able to speak. We were going to be able to speak. You voted on it last week. And before you let us speak, you voted us out. You voted us out. But anyway, Madam Chair, may I ask Mr. Cole a question, if you don't mind? I'd have to direct it to the chair. He can hear the question. He can respond. You held up a book. Was that the charter or that just a doc? Sir, how many pages is in that?
Let's see, it is
160 pages.
160 something.
Okay.
The charter doesn't have 166 pages.
Okay, can I ask you to direct the questions and comments?
Yes, Madam Chair, the charter doesn't have 30 pages.
The one we have is 150.
That's not the charter. You don't have the charter. You don't. If you got 100 and some pages, you do not have the charter. The charter is right here. This is your charter right here. If you probably read the top of that page, it probably says charter, law, and law's application. Does it say that? No. It doesn't say that. Do you look, because what has to happen, this is the charter. The charter was codified 1995, they implemented in 1996. This is the charter right here. The 100 and some odd pages is not the charter. And I would encourage you all to get the document that is the charter. Augusta Richmond County can't charter itself. A lot of the 100 and some pages is expounding on what it says in this document. And if you're going to make changes to this, you got to have this document, and this is what you're drawing for. Now, is it in there? If you have the correct document, if you look at Article 5, you will see the word charter. If Article 5 is in there, you will see the word charter, if it's the same document, is the page that I'm thinking about. But other than that, you don't have the charter. You have, you see Article 5? What does it say? Article 5. Say what now? It says charter. That's your charter. That Article 5 portion is the only thing is your charter. The rest of it is not your charter. And it's going to consist of this right here. So all the other stuff that you're reading is not your charter. Now, what is the charter? The charter is the consolidation bill that was passed in 1995, and it's House Bill 805. That's what that is.
Mr. Hassan, we are working as directed through the Carl Vinson Institute.
Well,
Your point is to reduce the amount of reading?
No, I'm not going to do amount of reading. I'm telling you it's not the consolidation bill.
Okay.
That's what I'm telling you, and that's what you ought to find out.
The consolidation bill is on a different tab.
Ma'am?
The consolidation bill is located on a different tab.
If you have the consolidation bill and you look at Article 5, it's going to be this document, if that's the case. And that's what I'm saying to you. Your 100 and some pages is not your consolidation bill. It is not your charter. It is not House Bill 805. That's my point. And I would hope that you all will get some clarity on that, because that's what it is.
Thank you, Mr. Hassan.
Okay, thank you.
Before he leaves the podium, sir, could we get your name addressed for our records?
Mr. Hassan? Not after all the fuss I just made. Ben Hassan, 3529 Monte Carlo Drive.
Yes, sir.
I think that was great.
Fill out that.
Yeah.
I think that was great. You pointed out something that I've been following this entire book, been reading the whole book. Mm-hmm. That's great. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ms. Bakos.
Mr. Hassan, I have a question for you. So is you bringing up the charter versus the consolidation bill because, like, what does the resolution forming our committee say? Like, is that the challenge here, that we're only supposed to be addressing those 30-some pages and not the rest of it?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am. Because that's what you're revising. You're revising the consolidation bill. That's what the state sent down. All those other pages, that didn't come down with the House bill, or the charter, or the enabling act. What came out of the enabling act is right here, and potentially what you got in Section 5, Article 5. All the rest of that is where the commission opined over a period of time about how the government can operate based on as they expanded their footprint. But what your task was to revise the charter, revise the consolidation bill, or not to do it, but to make recommendations. And so this is the document that you should be using.
The chair acknowledges Dr. McCorn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Given Mr. Hassan's point, which may be very valid for the scope of our work, I'm wondering if the attorney, Mr. Plunkett, could speak to whether that is within the scope of our responsibility beyond what the charter says.
There is a Consolidation Act that was approved, as Mr. Hassan did point out, and it is actually attached as a second tab of this. Based on that Consolidation Act, there was an adoption of a charter that expanded some of the discussions that were provisions that were provided in the Consolidation Act. If you follow the Consolidation Act substantially, it follows the same outline with a little bit more of a body to it, I guess you would say. What I believe that you would find happening is that you would make a recommendation to the body, the longer document, and then what would ultimately happen is that the legislative body would the legislative delegation would adopt an act that would incorporate those changes through essentially change the consolidation bill in that regard. But I believe you're tasked with both reviewing the Consolidation Act and what is commonly known as the Charter. That's the body that you're making recommendations to, and then this would be going to, as we know, to the commission, the legislative delegation, and a number of elected officials. So I believe that is what the intent of this resolution was. And the document that was provided from the Carl Institute based on the resolution and communications with the governing body of Augusta.
Thank you, Mr. Plunkett. Mr. Fouché.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to be clear, Mr. Hassan, may I address you?
Yes, that's the chair. Yes.
Is the document that you're referring to as the charter the City of Augusta's charter, or is it the Augusta-Richmond County Consolidated Charter?
That's exactly the latter.
The latter?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Would you please leave a copy of that with our chair?
Yes, I'll be more than glad to do that.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
May I make a comment based on what Attorney Plunkett said as well?
2 minutes.
Yes, ma'am. And also that goes back to my point, if you look at the grand scheme of things, and he said the consolidation should be in the charter. Out of 160-some pages you got, the only thing going to say that charter is Section 5, Article 5. That's the charter. The rest of it is not.
Thank you, Mr. Hassan.
A follow-up, please.
You may.
So,
Mr.
again,
Fouché.
point of clarity. Who authored the City of Augusta's charter, the document that you have in your hand?
The legislative body in 1995.
And who pushed that through the legislative branch?
Senator Walker, Jack Cornell, House Representative Jack Cornell, Robin Williams, all of those gentlemen, Representative Howard, all of those was involved in that process.
Okay, Senator Walker primarily, correct?
I wouldn't say primarily, but he's one of the main players at that time.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Any other comments from this body? Thank you, Mr. Hassan.
Thank you, welcome.
Any other public comments? Chair acknowledges Marion Williams, former commissioner.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Can you state your name and address?
Yes, my
Reverend
name
Williams.
is Marion Williams. I live at 1941 Crater Drive, Augusta, Georgia, 30906. I've been here this morning listening to the conversation, and I'm excited about the participants who want to work on this charter and the consolidation bill. I had a couple of questions, and I'm wondering why they're asking you to do what my grandfather would say, make straw without bricks, doing a job that you don't have the equipment to do. There's no one on this board that have served under the consolidation bill. I served for 16 years on this body as a commissioner, but you need some information, and y'all are asking some good information today to find out where you need to start from. I'm really disappointed when I look at two former commissioners that worked with me, and Marcia, you know that as well. Bill Corky and Don Grantham left this body and went straight to the DOT board and started to serve as DOT members. But there's nobody on this board that ever worked under this charter or this consolidation bill who knows it any better than the people who worked up under it. Not that they should guide it, but they should have some information to share with you. No one had mentioned it yet, as I listened this morning. Out of 159 counties in Georgia, there are only about 4 that's consolidated. That makes a big difference. I heard somebody say, and it might have been the mayor say, this, all these other cities looked at their charter and looked at their charter, but we are uniquely different because we have consolidated our city and our county together to make a city. And then we need to look at why do we do that in the beginning. If the train is rolling smooth, there's no reason to change it, but evidently it was not rolled as smooth. So we end up consolidating through the state legislators who brought the charter down. I think Augusta, the city of Augusta was established back in 1736 or somewhere in that area. Never had anybody talking about reviewing anything until 1996, when we come up with the consolidation bill. And that's the biggest part, the consolidation. Because one half of the city was not being treated as the other half being treated. The vote was not equal. The disparity was really, really bad. We had to do a disparity study here in Augusta. And the study stayed on the shelf for probably 10 years. Ms. Bonham could probably pull that record. I don't have it exactly, but for a long time. And finally, they got the commission to approve the study, and they did. They kept saying how much money gonna cost, and we couldn't do that. It was a will to not to do the disparity study. When the study came back, it said that Augusta, Georgia was discriminating against women and minorities. So you got a lot in this document, you got a lot in this whole city that need to be addressed, and people act like it's not gonna ever take place. You're talking about getting a progressive, you gotta think progressive. You gotta do everybody right. You gotta be fair. And that's not always been the case. I don't care what you say, I'll watch what you do. The attorney said something earlier, and I've been practicing law since I've been on here. One more minute, I'm sorry. Anyway, let me go back. I got 3 or 4 documents here that since I was elected, they've been trying to change this consolidation bill. I got an article here that the newspaper had put out that when I raised sand there, I would say something else as a Baptist preacher, I've been not saying that. But look, because they was trying to change the charter, they had got with some of the commissioners and put some stuff together. That's just one time. But over the 15 years, there's 5 or 6 times. Just let's not forget about here a few years ago, maybe a year ago, when the Somerville community wanted to pull out of Augusta. We're going to do something different. We have our own fire department, our own police department. They wanted to do that. Let's not forget also Dave Bobby sent out a letter. The letter came out that you move so many blacks out and so many whites in to make the district whiter. This is what the letter said. So we got to stop playing games. We got to understand we are one city. We got to move together. We got to be progressive. We can't look at this color thing. This color thing is always going to be with us, but we got to understand we're all God's children. So we got to do what is necessary now. I've been sitting back. I hadn't been in any meeting. This is the first time I've been in this chamber since I left office, because I know I couldn't be quiet.
Well, we hope you become a frequent flyer, and there is much to learn. And I'd love to take you to lunch if you got time to do it.
Anytime you call me, we go way back.
We do.
I'm not always right, but I'm honest. I'm always honest. I'm going to tell you the truth. You might not like what I tell you, but then you go check it out. And if I lie to you, then don't believe nothing else I tell you. That's all I can ask you to do.
Yep. Please don't leave until we get a chance to set a date. Thank you.
I had a comment.
Chair acknowledges Ms. Bakos.
Mr. Williams, I did just want to let you know, our first 2 meetings, the Carl Vinson Institute did supply us with a list of, I believe, 8 consolidated governments in Georgia. And then Ms. Wilhelmy did also send us the charters for 3 of them. So I did just want to give you a heads up that is being discussed and brought up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bakos. Welcome, friend. Name and address for Ms. Bonner, please.
Hello, my name is Leland Dwight. My address is 1748 Taylor Road, Augusta, Georgia, 30906. So I have questions and concerns. Some of the questions that I have are, what are we doing to take surveys in the needs of the public? I mean, everybody talks about what the public needs and what we're doing in the public, but what is actually being said that the public needs? I'm not hearing that, right? Because I'm not seeing too many people out there in the public doing too many things, right? Secondly, what are we doing for the citizens? Actually, what are we hands-on with the citizens doing to help them understand what we need? All right, and what are we doing to listen to the citizens of things that we need? And I wish Ms. Allen was here because she could hear my questions about what are we doing better to manage the resources and implement those resources for those different departments that she's supervising. Because it becomes a point where we don't have an understanding. Even when we vote for things, as I'm hearing votes, you have a 5 and 6. Right, and because we're not coming to some kind of understanding or agreement on what really needs to be done, there's a lot of things shot out there, but what is really being done? And for people like me in the community who are giving support and trying to create projects, how can those resources be used for a person like me, right? Because my background or because things have not been presented in office or something like that, who is stomping out there in the public and understands what's needed. Just like you said, Mr. Pierce, our kids dying. Our families are in need. Yeah, they picking up the trash and they're doing all this stuff, but you got a place like Carrie J. Mays, they got no attendance, no help, and they're wondering why their kids don't have a place to go, right? And my last thing that I would like to say is the concern of Mr. Foster, right? Facer, I apologize. The budget. It seems that we have a budget and finding how to help the sources of the budget is unequal, right? Some of the things that I hear in the budget that speak on equal is health and welfare. It's the smallest thing in the budget, right? How can you put something that is needed out there but not need the health, the welfare and the health of the public? I think that would be more important to have the health and welfare of the budget to be more stamina than to have police. If you're saying that you're going to implement these programs to help these people, I believe that would be part of the health and welfare of the public, right? And then it's just less money going towards that, but you're trying to help it. It doesn't balance out. And so if you're going to recreate or if you're going to deal with these problems, you have to have a balance to what you're doing, not just a stature. I'm going to use this or I'm going to use this here, I'm going to use this here. How's it going to work if you don't have a balance to it? You know, one thing, when I was growing up, my father used to institute in my brain that a man is supposed to lead. And not only that, he's supposed to take care of his family, right? And then as I got older, you see a lot of us, and I'm not just talking about black males, I'm talking about males, period, are not being substantiated enough to even take care of their families. Why? Because there's nothing out there for them or nobody out there to impact what is going wrong. But yet and still, we're throwing all this energy into what needs to be corrected. I think we need to start with budgeting in the right areas to do things that help us. That's what I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Dwight. Ms. Bakos?
I did just want to mention real quick, I think Dr. Facer had mentioned he wasn't sure necessarily about all of the different categories and what falls under that for the budget. But for health and welfare, I think we do have a lot of resources here for health. And you got to keep in mind too, like DPH is state funded, so that wouldn't be coming from our city budget. So it doesn't mean that those resources aren't here. It just kind of like the school board. We have schools, but it doesn't show up on this budget. So I just wanted to point that out. And I think moving forward, once we get to that section, we'll get more of a breakdown as far as the budget for health and welfare and other things, correct? Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Bakos. Mr. Wimberly? Wait, pardon me, Mr. Coleman.
Yes, sir. I agree with everything you said, and I just want to let you know that most of these committee members, probably all of them, feel the same way as I do, and we're here to recommend changes in how our government is structured so the money is used more proficiently to get down to the level to address problems like you're discussing. I'm also a member of the community. My family is also, and in my heart that I'm going to do everything I can as one of the committee members to try to recommend changes for streamlining this government, do away with duplication of services, and make sure that money gets to people who need that money, not just bloated departments and multiple individuals in those departments that are not needed. I am going to be recommending strong to streamline this government and to put the money where it should be going, and that is to you and your family and all your other residents that live around you. I just want to make you know that I understand everything you say.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman. Mr. Wimberly.
I'm going to just toot my horn a little bit about getting information out to the community. I'm the president of the Richmond County Neighborhood Association Alliance. We meet once a month. I guarantee you that the people that attend that, and that's over 35 different communities, they are well informed. And I guarantee you that during this session with me on this committee, they're going to have input on my voice when I come and speak here. So the community, on my behalf, will have some input as to what's going on here. I'm a 30-year veteran of the military, retired at the highest rank of Command Sergeant Major. So I know how to get information out. So if you want to be a part of the community, come to those meetings. The next one is this coming Saturday, Jamestown Community Center, 9 o'clock.
Yes, sir.
Community input.
Thank you, Mr. Wimberly. Any other comments? If not, can we have a motion to adjourn? Our next meeting will be May 15th. Okay.
One thing before
Mr.
we
Coleman.
adjourn. Structure and seating arrangements. Ms. Bonner, is it possible? I mean, I know it's possible because I'm an IT guy, to be able to shift the chair seat to the middle, the vice chair to her immediate left, and the secretary in my seat by the next meeting? Because all it is click, and they can change it right back if they want to. If they can't do it, I would gladly do it for them. I just want it to be presentable, just like they are, just like the committee when the commission when they show up here. I want them in their proper seats.
Certainly, Mr. Cole, that's the desire that you can communicate with the chair regarding your seating arrangements, and we'll look to hear from her.
Thank you. Very good comment. Mr. Wimberly?
This is one for another personal thing. This morning, I had to drive around in the parking lot looking for a place to park. Now, I know when the planning committee meet, they have bags that they put over those 1 hour parking, and I hope they haven't told me yet. But
Lord, I hope they haven't too.
They have sign that they put over the 1 hour parking. If there could be some recognition for us as we come here to meet, so we're not looking for a place to park. Thank you.
Thank you. Next meeting, minus Mr. Cole, will be Thursday, May 15th. The topic will be demographics. Ms. Bakos and I will work on an agenda and get it to you, Ms. Bonner, by next Thursday. And if I don't have any other business to transact with this committee, let's stand adjourned.